Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. I'm Adam Blue, and with this video, I'm going to give my first impressions on Seed Destiny because I am shocked. Shocked. If you haven't watched it, I do have my impressions of Seed, which generally was underwhelming, and I didn't really understand why it's such a big deal, but the ending got pretty action-packed. But then I'm like, well, that could be because I sat through like 30 episodes of character development. But Destiny seems to be something else entirely, so let's get into it. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe, and if you think this is a cool video, give it a like. Also, check the links in the description for ways you can support the channel, or just join our Discord. We have a lot of fun there, but let's get started. Okay, so to recap Seed real quick, it was just nonsense. It seemed to just kind of redo UC in terms of more like the visuals, I would say, really, because the way they had the anime characters, I feel like those characters were a product of their time. Even the way they designed in general, the series just kind of looked bad, or that the way it was made, because I think this is when computers were leveraged for animation, you have scenes that look like they took their time, maybe were the higher budget ones. Then there's just a lot of scenes that looked bad, low quality, but I think it had to do with juggling the budget. But when we get to Destiny, now Destiny, I think it came out around 2005 or so, so obviously after the original Seed, but it gave it a few years before trying again with another Gundam cartoon or anime output. And what I'm seeing, it's almost like that is the mark of modern Gundam. It feels like what I'm seeing in Destiny, I think it's been up to 8 episodes so far, but what I'm seeing really looks like this is modern Gundam in terms of the animation style, even the writing, character dialogue, even though there's the dubbing, the voice acting of the original Japanese. A lot of times I take that with a grain of salt because, you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to the delivery of the acting. And you almost have to take that into account. And by taking it into account, it's still way more well written. The dialogue between characters not only seem more realistic, but they bring up things a viewer watching would be like, well, if that's going on, why that? And that's where I feel modern Gundam does that a whole lot. I would say old UC and modern Gundam does that a lot, especially Witch for Mercury, where something will happen where I'm like, well, that's kind of a weird plot development, and they don't talk on it, and then they do. So it's almost like treating respect to the viewer. Now, also, when I talked about Seed looking like UC and kind of having the general overall feel of UC, where there's space people versus Earth people, that's kind of a Gundam trope. But also the different sides. You have Zaft, which shares very similar naming conventions to Zeon, and then you have the Earth Alliance, which looks like the Federation from UC, and so a lot of what was from original Seed, it was just like that was the surface level. Oh, this seems like Universal Century. But with Destiny, it seems like they went further in. It's almost like they're like, okay, I see what you're doing with Seed. With Seed Destiny, we're gonna approach it as, we know that we're trying to recreate UC, so let's grab all the best elements of UC and really make the show about those beats. I mean, you have the way it starts is you're almost quickly thrust into the idea of a 3-faction conflict. And I gotta say that some of the prior information we got from Seed kind of does help build on the opening of Destiny, and it's got its own disaster sequence, which is excellently done. But you have also the character Atherin, who's known as Alex, and he was kind of at first the main antagonist of the first one, and his father being the one that idealized Zaft, Zeon, and now in Destiny his name is Alex, so it's like he's taken on another name to hide himself. Very similar to what we see with Char and Quattro. Eventually he does reveal himself. He decides to take on the mantle to get into a mobile suit. So right now I'm already seeing those parallels with like Zeta and Char, and also that AUG idea Again, they did do that a little bit with the Seed, but Seed Destiny really has that in motion. In fact, there's even dialogue with Athrun where it's not about him choosing a side, it's about him doing what's right in a way, or that was the chairman of Zaft was explaining this to him and everything. Very interesting because it's almost like a quick recap of what we got out of Universal Century. But it goes beyond that. Now, while Unicorn was the animation, the OVA was made after Destiny, the story had already been out there. And so we see this Princess Kigali. She reminds me of Minerva in a lot of ways. You have this younger princess, her father had passed away, but she wants to do, what is right, even though, she's with an organization that's had a history of conflict and all that. So I like how they're kind of setting up that little Minerva thing going on with that princess, that dynamic, along with the dynamic of Athrun using his alternate name as he's trying to wander around this world. And then we have Shin, who kind of reminds me of the idea of, a sequel, Universal Century having a brand new protagonist, and quickly, I think, doing a good job of making you like the protagonist. I think Gundam has always done a good job of introducing the new main protagonist, which I think is Athrun, but that's the same with Zeta, where it seems like Quattro would be the main protagonist. And it would just be interesting to see. Again, this is just the first 8 episodes in of Destiny, so it'd be interesting to see where it goes. So I talked about, Athrun, the kind of Zeta thing going on here. We also have a colony drop. So there's that Junius 7 or something, I believe it was called. It was a colony that was destroyed during a previous conflict, very similar to, what kicked off the 1 Year War, or what, led to the 1 Year War. But then we have a group that decides to send this colony down to Earth. So again, real quick in Destiny, tons of callbacks to other UC Gundam. And then I think it even does other little winks and nods here and there. There is and I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It could be Gaia, Abyss, Chaos, I forget which one. But one of those Gundams looks exactly like the Death Scythe. And the Death Scythe has a really unique design to it, with how the V-fin is and how the shoulder things are. And you pretty much have that in here. So if you're a fan of Wing, they're going to have that sort of look, especially with all the different Gundams, a bunch of V-fin RX-78-2 types going around there. So it also is similar to Wing in that respect, where there's a bunch of Gundams, whereas the original didn't have a bunch of Gundams. There was, technically speaking, there's the V-finned RX-78-2, and then you get into the Zeta, the double Zeta, but there wasn't in the Mark IIs, but there wasn't a team of Gundams in UC. And what's really interesting is the fact that the main, so far at the beginning, it's the main thing is you have the Impulse, which looks amazing, by the way. It's a core fighter that you see from UC, and then it has all the parts that go together, which was wasn't that kind of in a way taken out of the movie trilogy of the OG Gundam, because with the whole G fighter, I forget the name of the whole thing. But I really like, and I love it, with the music. The music is excellent. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, but real quick, I just want to say the music is excellent, because when you see that Impulse sequence, it reminds me of an old Super Sentai or Power Rangers where they're doing the morph and it takes forever. I love seeing the Impulse get ready to leave the hangar deck. The music is amazing as it's doing that as well. And then it's fighting alongside Azaku. The machine is even called Azaku. Yet this isn't Universal Century. So again, there's all these obvious, you see, here's a bunch of UC, and we're going to make a story that's not offensive and doesn't treat you like an idiot. And then I got up to the point where Athrun gets his new Gundam, and it's called the Savior, spelt in its Canadian or British way with the O and the U. I'm gonna say it's a callback to G Savior, especially the other suit that is with the Savior is called alongside the Gundams of Destiny is a Gaia suit. Gaia is the company in G Savior that made the Savior. That could just be a coincidence, but with all of these callbacks together, I'm feeling that was done on purpose, and they're having fun with this. Awesome animation, where I feel that is the start of the modern Gundam we see today. So far, some really cool designs. I think the Impulse so far is like amazing. It looks better than anything I saw in Seed. And then the other suits with, the Zaku and then the Jins and all the different looks. But even the story beats, from the colony drops to someone using a different name to then setting up setups along and backstabbing along the factions to create these conflicts that we're going to see move out forward. And then really seeing the ship designs too, seeing the Char clone, which was in the previous one anyway, but I like how, I think there was a character, Ray, once he came out onto the field, into space, the Char clone did the little new type flash. So again, another like direct callback to UC. And he has his own ship too, which is pretty cool. So, it is, I'm just shocked how good so far Destiny is, and I hope it keeps up, because to me, it makes Destiny what I look for when I'm watching anything Gundam. Like, I think Witch from Mercury is pretty interesting on its own. I still think other Gundam shows are better than Witch from Mercury, but as its own thing, Witch from Mercury is pretty good. But I see Destiny up there. If I was going to do a tier rating so far, the episodes I've seen, let's say that was just a movie, I would have that as S tier. It is that cool. And I think because the animation is better too, they do a better job of portraying the characters, because again, the face designs aren't that great. Sometimes I don't know who I'm looking at, and I think it's even hilarious that there's a Lacus clone, because it's almost like a play on the fact that all the characters look like each other anyway. And not that she's a clone, it's just another person that just happens in story to look like her, but she's being used because she looks just like it. So it's, to me, that's almost like a play on the fact that the characters are designed that way. But it's done better here, especially the main characters. They sort of do just enough where you can kind of tell who they're talking about now. They saved themselves from what was designed in Seed. But anyway, there you have it. I didn't really have any visuals, because as much as I just want to have the launch sequence and music shown next to me while I'm talking about it, really, I'm just going to get dinged, and this is going to be blocked in some region. That's what seems to always happen with the Gundam stuff. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching so far. You try to avoid spoilering me yet. I'm going to get through this pretty quick, though, but so far I'm enjoying Destiny. Curious what you think. To me, and I guess a point that I meant to get to earlier, is Destiny is not only a good Gundam, but just a good sci-fi on its own. Tons of action. It's cleverly written. Like, they could do much worse, and I think the writing on this is actually well done. It's almost like they understand what they're working with, and then they know how to write around that. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think. We'll talk later.